good afternoon. We talked yesterday. Once again, my name is Seale. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm with the Otolith Creek Hatchery in Kodiak, Alaska. Do Gary Burns' old job. Try to do it well. It's a pleasure to be here and see some familiar faces and some people that have influenced me in my career in Alaska. It's definitely an honor to be here today. And thank you guys for all your dedication and what you've done to lay the groundwork. Gary, never could have done it without you there, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to present here today. Just a little background about the facility before we get started. Like I said yesterday, Otolith Creek was started as a central incubation facility, but we've branched out into different types of projects now. In the early years, that definition probably would have applied a bit better, but these days we're trying to get out and about and do a few more things. We've added kings, coho, and rainbows to our inventories each year. And just a couple of pictures of what we're doing. This is the city of Kodiak has a city water supply, and we have a small two-raceway holding facility out there. We use that for Chinook rearing and also for our Chinook brood. In the upper right here, this is our lake rearing coho salmon project. We were rearing sockeye smolts for 3 years, doing lake rearing, and now I've switched over to coho. And this is a small lake, Margaret Lake. His official name is on the way to the airport in Kodiak, so that project gets a lot of attention. We stock spring coho smolt with that. Little aerial shot of our spring smolt camp that Trent was talking about earlier with all the flights, and out there at Telrod Cove. And this is a nice little picture of our facility there on free helicopter ride day. A guy had stopped out that flies in Kodiak came and saw helicopter rides one afternoon. And of course, I can't help but mention now that all of our rearing area is now covered at facilities. It's pretty nice to have. A little bit of overview of our operations at Otolith Creek. 4 species, 5 stocks. We're doing those each year, and 3 to 5 million sockeye if we're lucky, and 200,000 Chinook smolt to be stocked in 4 road systems and rivers in Kodiak. So if you want to come catch a king salmon within 15 minutes of your hotel, come on up to Kodiak. We'll take care of you for the summer. So what I'm here to present on today, the dry mark, a viable alternative. To expand production for our Telrod Cove spring smolt project, the Alaska Department of Fish and Game asked us to come up with a marketing program to differentiate those fish from the fry that were stocked in the lake. So for the first couple of years, we went with a 10% fin clip. And of course, that's not going to give us very good results on any kind of a return information between the 2 projects. And so after just doing a lot of reading, pulling on experience at my other jobs, and writing up an experimental protocol, we decided to start working with dry marking, and this process allows us to mark otoliths without any of the traditional infrastructure for thermal marking and create a viable alternative mark on the otolith. So what is dry marking? Dry marking is a simple version of thermal marking in that the light bands are produced during the dry periods and the dark bands are produced during the wet periods. We utilize a 24-hour marking period to ensure good band formation and easier identification. In the beginning, we wanted to make sure that we had a visible mark, and so a 24-hour period was selected. All the eggs to be marked were seated into hatch trays inside your toy box deep matrix style incubators. We used hobo loggers, and those were inserted in the egg mass to monitor and record the temperature profiles during the wet and dry periods, and give us some real-time information about what was going on with the mark. During the dry periods, the incubator water was turned off, and the incubators are completely drained. Wet burlap is placed over the top of the egg mass on top of the hatch tray, and that's to provide some extra moisture during the dry periods when the eggs are drained. All incubators were also outfitted with a lid, and a wet burlap plug was inserted into the effluent opening to minimize the humidity loss to the atmosphere during the dry periods. We just want to keep that humidity up in there. There is a little bit of extra disinfection with all of this going into the incubators now, but we just set up a couple of extra incubators with disinfectant solutions, so the daily changes can be taken care of relatively easily. Here you can see a toy box all set up, ready to accept eggs. We'll flood that, give a surface disinfection to the eggs when we load them after an eyed egg processing. In the top right here, that's the eggs have been loaded, the incubator has been drained, and just a nice picture of where we located the hobo logger in the center of the egg mass. We figured by locating that the farthest away from the aluminum surfaces, we would be able to see what kind of saturation we had in the complete egg mass. And then down here on the bottom, the incubator all closed up. Don't open them up. Very tempting. If you want to do it so bad, you want to check on those eggs in there, they're fine. Don't open them. Here's a picture of us draining the incubators. Each incubator has an inlet and an outlet valve, so we use the outlet valves to drain the incubators. We can turn the water off to each one of these manifolds with the main valve down at the end of the incubation room, and so if we're marking one full side of the incubation mod, we can use that large valve. If not, we do individual incubator valve manipulations. We turn the lights on, especially for this picture. Usually we got the dark on all the time in there, and you can see we've got the lids up on the incubators. We've been putting the burlap over the top of the egg mass. During the wet periods, we can just leave that we just fold that burlap up and leave it in there in the incubator with the egg mass. This is my assistant, and we're draining incubators. We do it at 10 o'clock each day, 10 a.m. And then after this process is completed, we close the outlet valves, and all of the incubation room floors are flooded with betadine solution to disinfect the floors, since we've dirtied them all up with egg water there. We use a simple form that we put on the door, put on regular ring paper, and 2 staff members are always present for doing the Otolith mark changes. We had an opportunity to do a custom mark due to a 1-person operation in 2013, so we decided maybe it'd be better to have 2. Here's a picture of the dry mark setup, basic schematic. Explanation is probably not needed too much here. Picture says 1,000 words, and I've only got about 2 minutes. You can see that the hobo loggers in the egg mass, we use the support underneath the hatch tray to keep it from sagging too much. And the burlap plug is also just cut down on the amount of air that's traveling in and out of the incubator while it's working. The challenges of dry marking, there's a few. Fluctuating outside temperatures can hinder the stabilization of the building's ambient air temperature. We do heat the building with 2 electric, basically shop heaters, and we just use the basic turn dial thermostats on those, start them up a few days before the marking period, and heat the building to about 4 degrees Celsius above the ambient water temperature. Highly variable water temperature will offer the same challenges. We have a highly variable water temperature source at Pillar Creek. We're usually running in November. If the reservoir has not frozen over yet, we do have rain events and other cold spells or anything else that could give us a few challenges for water temperature. Slow temperature absorption by the egg mass requires long periods of marking to create several otolith marks. We're going to see about that this year with our cohorts of our route here for coho. Maybe trying to mark, knocking them down to about 12 hours. The resulting longer marking time frames, I'll talk about that in another slide. Maintaining the humidity of the interior of the incubator, don't mess with the lid. While less costly than thermal marking, it's not free. We do have some small costs for running the electric heaters in the building. And then, of course, coping with the knowledge that you just turned off the water to all your eggs. It's just tough the first couple of times. The first time I turned off about 3 million, that was lovely. I got this from East Bay. It was an Otolith sheet that we used there. We just kind of bastardized it to our own use. As you can see here, we just date them out, put the number of eggs, basic information that we want to track for our marks. This is just the computer version of what we put on the door each day and record the temperatures and such. Marking is initiated after I-day processing, and usually it starts between 300 and 350, 500 TUs, depending on the year and the timing and the weather and some other factors. All gaps between the marking periods were 4 days. We wanted to give the eggs a chance to stabilize, and you can see that reflected here in the chart. And then during these wet periods, the eggs were stirred, so we can move the eggs around in the incubators, make sure everybody was getting the same, hopefully, amount of heat for marking and not spending all their time up against the aluminum sides or anything like that. Here's a temperature profile from the hobo logger. Like I said, the hobo loggers were inserted into the middle of the egg mass, and we recorded at 15-minute intervals. A lot of thermal graphs that I can see from hobo loggers for otolith marks at thermal marking facilities look a little bit like skyscrapers, straight up, straight down. Ours look a little bit more like shark fins, but you can see here there is a regular heat absorption into the incubator, and in that 24-hour period, we get pretty dang close to a 4-degree separation. Hobos were downloaded each morning prior to water manipulations to record the highest temperature achieved in the egg mass. If the building was a little warm or it warmed up overnight, you have an opportunity to kind of put a little bit more heat on the eggs if it warms up. So to cool the eggs back down, if the temperature exceeded the 4-degree C differential from water temperature, what we did is short-circuited the bottom of the incubator by turning on the water flow and opening up the exit valve to let that water circulate in the bottom of the incubator. The aluminum soaks up that cold, cools off the egg mass, and then we can turn the water back on. Sometimes, I think we pulled them down another degree and a half. It takes about an hour of short circuit and get them right back on ambient water temperature. Here's the results. This is an otolith from brood year 2012. It's a 5-2. This is the photograph vouched by the Age and Tag Lab in Juneau for the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. This was our first year of finding these marks. This is the 1-2 component of our return to Telluride Cove this year from the net pen project. So we were excited to start finding those. Initial readings this year indicated that of the roughly 82,650 fish that were harvested in the special harvest area, about 59% of those fish were these 1-2s from the net pen project, for a total of roughly 27,300 fish from the net pen project, just in this 1-2 class. So that was pretty exciting. We did find a few 1-1s this year. We have our own lab in KRAA now, and, but just a couple of the 1-1s, a very small component of those 1-1 returns in this fishery. We did have a small variant one year. You can see that this is a pretty big mark, a 3-4H. There was a little bit of 2-4H in there. This mark from BY13, we did have a little bit of temperature variance this year during the marking period and in one of the last bands. We also had a creepy valve on one of the incubators at one point for the last bit of this mark. So that might have caused a problem in one of the incubators, and this one couldn't come from that sample. Marking, like I said, is usually done in November. And in November in Kodiak, usually we have pretty stable temperatures, high 30s, 40s, lots of rain, lots of clouds, so pretty stable temperature, and that makes it a little easier for us during that time. Helps with the regularity of marks, and also helps with the building temperatures for making the marks more regular. This is a 4-3-2 mark. This is the one-person operation mark. It did turn out quite well, though. In the long run, we just forced a 4-3-2 on the rest of the mark instead of that other mark that we had, the 3-4. This mark here takes a total of 26 days to complete, so not a quick mark at all. Sometimes I think that Dion is just pushing my marks until I kill them all. I'm not sure. We'll keep going until we can get as many as we can. The elements of success for this project, the way that we've looked at it was the ability to manipulate and stabilize the building temperatures with heaters. The incubation building was previously unheated. Many years of wintertime bucket flushing of the toilet with the crew. The Katoi box incubators, the beef style matrix incubators with the PVC sheet lids, they provide us the ability to create and to contain the humid environment around the eggs with minimal moisture escapement. The elevated hatch trays create an airspace both above and below the egg mass, and it also avoids a lot of direct contact of the eggs to the aluminum of the perforated plate in the incubator and the incubator sides. The resulting airspace allows for more uniform heat absorption by the egg mass, having it represented both on the top and the bottom, even with the moist burlap on top. It's placed over the egg mass to add the moisture to the environment. Do we know that it's needed or not? Not really, but it makes me feel better, and it's working so far, so I'm not going to change it. The use of multiple hobo temperature loggers. Since we're required to vouch each one of our individual incubators, we use a lot of hobo luggers for each side of the mod just to make sure that we're getting uniform marks through all the incubators that we're using. We tried an experiment last year, a dry mark alternate. This was an experimental process with coho eggs. What we decided to do is that there's always been a little bit of talk about whether this is a heat mark or a stress mark. So the only opportunity for removing one of those criteria is to remove the heat. Can't take away the stress. This coho mark was done without any temperature changes to the building. We just keep the building from freezing during the winter months. And so we decided just to turn the incubators on and off to see if we could create a mark without worrying about the temperature so much. These coho eggs are taken in November, develop very slowly. Don't usually see any hatch for about 5 months. Our incubation temperature today is 0.7, so they do move along a little slowly as far as TUs. And this mark was successful and was created only with a 1.6 degrees Celsius differential average. And you can see that reflected here. Not a very big mark, just a 2.2. This is a voluntary mark that we take from the Department of Fish and Game for these fish. We're not required to track this mark, but to do experiments like this, we have to have one assigned. Here's a picture of that. You can quite clearly see the two separate bands here from this mark, well separated. The only thing that they asked is this year we wait a little bit longer to move the mark a little further away from the primordial. That'll make it a little easier for them in the future. This year I'm considering, and I've been working with my assistant, we're working up the protocols and the sheets now. We're going to try a 12-hour dry mark. Right now we do it at 10 a.m. every day, so a 10 a.m., 10 p.m. schedule when you don't live at work is a little bit more taxing, but doing it for half the amount of time seems like a bonus to me. So we'll see what happens with that, and another good experiment just to see how a shorter time period would affect what we're doing as far as the mark goes. We have our own Otolith lab, like I mentioned earlier, for KRAA and Kodiak, and we can ascertain the success of this new experiment this year without having to worry about getting it vouched by the state right away. Our technicians can take them right out of the eggs and let us know how it's working out for us. For a summary, some more pictures here, just us working with the eggs. The other picture's really pretty with the burlap. This is probably a little closer to reality. Subjecting salmon eggs, and I put salmon there instead of just sockeye because we're working on it with other species to a temperature differential in 24-hour cycles will produce a viable Otolith mark regardless of how that temperature differential is achieved, whether thermally or with our process. Some eggs will even mark at less than the recommended 4 degrees C. That's well known as far as doing thermal marking, maybe down into the 3 range. Salmon eggs subjected to 24-hour periods of no water will survive with minimal mortality. With minimal mortality, I mean minimal. We see 99.9% survival on these eggs. Don't have any issues with mortalities. Dry marking is a viable and cost-effective method for mass market salmonids. We're doing full brood year marking now, differential marking on cohorts of up to about 3.5 million fish. And really the biggest question is, are you willing to turn your water off? Conclusions, it's not free or fast, but it does work as a viable marking alternative. You can see here some other pictures from the Market Tag Lab for the marks that we vouched. Any questions?